The Packers played another preseason game, and we felt like many of the same issues still plague this team. We will tell you how these ongoing issues affect key battles to make this 53.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Thank you, everybody, for coming back and taking a listen to us. Of course, and as always, I am Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. Thank you to any new and returning listeners for coming in and taking a listen to us. We are excited to talk Packers ball with you every week, Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to give us a like and sub and follow us. We are still running a promo. Every 50 new subscribers that we get, starting at number 600, we're going to be giving away some free Sounds Good swag. As we've said on previous episodes, you do have to be a public subscriber to get in on that and get some awesome Sounds Good hats. Also, too, on our channel, we have unlocked super chats, super stickers, and super thanks, super everything, which is another way you can interact and support our channel. So just know that we have that. Just some housekeeping information, though. We're going to be going through some preseason flow with game previews, game recaps, and then a 53-man roster update. Jordan, the Packers were back at practice today. Jordan Love showed up and was back in. At least he's participating in sevens, but no team periods for him as he's coming back from his thumb surgery on his non-throwing hand. What are some things that stood out to you from training camp today?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of news flowing out there except for injury updates. Players are back at practice. Players are not practicing. It's getting kind of old, to be honest. I think there were 16 guys that didn't practice in total. So I guess I'm kind of starting in the negative. You know, Monk is hurt now. LVN didn't practice. Banks wasn't practicing again. Clark didn't practice on Monday. So I know that they're going to take their time to try to get healthy. And that's in addition to, all of the other guys. We're going to talk about the guys who got hurt in the game and some updates, any updates we could find on that. But it was really good to see Jordan Love back. Supposedly it was just sevens. Had a couple of nice throws. They probably won't put him back into team periods for a little while. I mean, I'm not going to say that our whole season is contingent on Jordan Love being out there and being healthy, but obviously that's a big part of what we're trying to do. So good to see him back on the field. We're a little less than 3 weeks from that opener against the Detroit Lions. So we're really starting to ramp up here as this team looks to make some really tough decisions over the next couple of weeks. But hopefully we have joint practices on Thursday against the Seahawks. Hopefully there'll be some fun updates when this is a joint practice that is in Green Bay. So more of the beat will be at practice. And I'm sure we'll get a lot more looks and clips and fun things to talk about following that practice with the Seahawks. So let's jump into that preseason game that you talked about in the intro. The Packers did play the Colts in another game that felt like a little bit of a slog at times. The Packers, in my opinion, they did hold their own against the Colts ones. I think it was almost 30 players of meaningful stature, whether it's starters or key number twos, that did not play in this game. So mostly our second and our third unit. So how do you think those units did? And, we feel a little better probably knowing that they came back and won in the second half. I mean, at least I do. It's preseason. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of people out, but it was good to see some of that backup getting some competition against that starting offense from the Colts. And I thought for the most part, they pretty much held in check, which was pretty nice to see. I think just to start with the glass half empty, I think Anthony Belton had a really pretty good game against the Jets. He came back and was not executing, 5 penalties. I think he had a couple illegal procedures, 1 block in the back after a whistle, some unsportsmanlike conduct. And you could definitely tell because at halftime, Matt LaFleur was running up to him and getting right in his face. So, it's nothing, extremely egregious for a rookie to come in and, have some ebbs and flows too. No doubt that he's definitely going to make this team. He's got a lot of talent and a lot of things to continue to improve upon. But just in general, right? A lot of penalties, right? Even the Jets game, I think there was more in this game too. So a lot of pre-snap violations, a lot of that sort of different stuff. Just some not good execution. I'll stick with the offensive line. I think Jordan Morgan is looking extremely excellent at left tackle. Looked like he was picking up stunts really well that the Colts were giving them. Looked really good, is giving Rasheed Walker a little bit of run for his money, even though I think that they'll give Walker that spot. I thought Jacob Monk looked a little bit more improved than last week from the Jets. A little bit more solid performance overall, which was kind of good to see. Donovan Jennings, I think, is clearly, to me, anyways, like kind of the weak link on that starting five and needs some significant improvement. He was struggling with some of those stunts that the Colts were putting on. So, I thought that was some good and some bad, at least from the offensive line. You know what? I'm gonna give a special teamer here and Daniel Whelan a little bit of love. Man, perfect. Talk about a perfect punting performance. 3 punts at 148 yards for 49.3 average. All three of those punts landed in the 20-yard line with a long of 59 yards. So, you know what? We don't give much love, or we kind of think, the third wheel, right, on the special teams. But man, Daniel Whelan is definitely a field changer for us, and he just continues to show that. And he did so far in this game. Jordan, did you want to talk about some wide receivers or maybe some of the running back play, or where did you want to go from here?
I could go a lot of different directions from here. I was just going to say, in regards to the game in general, it's kind of hard for this offense to get its rhythm. There were some bright spots, I think. You saw some plays. You saw a couple wheel routes to Marshawn Lloyd, and then of course he gets hurt, but you could see what the potential is of what he might bring to this offense. He wasn't outstanding running the ball, but I also don't think the unit in front of him was exactly, being road graders for him on those snaps either. You talked about Jacob Monk. I think his big downfall right now when he's in the game is he's actually been a pretty terrible run blocker. Or sorry, no, he's good. He's decent run blocking, pass blocking is downfall. But there's a couple guys on this offensive line unit that haven't been great blocking the run, the last couple weeks. But I think that there's some flashes there. I think that the Packers could have definitely put a few more points on the board had they not have so many penalties kind of set them back. And eventually when they figure that out, we'll kind of move forward from there. Other guys who just impressed me the most in general, and then maybe we'll talk about some of these battles with wide receivers and stuff, but defensive side of the ball, I was really impressed by Tyron Hopper. I was impressed by Christian Welch. Conversely, I was not impressed by Isaiah Simmons, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about him on this episode. I think that, I really like the play of Amar Johnson and Abataconda as well, but Amar Johnson, and we'll talk about this in the 53, it's pretty much a lock, I think, for the practice squad at this point in time, but I think the Packers are really going to give him some consideration if they feel like he can do the same things as Emmanuel Wilson. Emmanuel Wilson had a nice game, though, too. I think he made a big play at the end of the first half to get down within, field goal range. Kind of looked like the same old Emmanuel Wilson that we're used to. So, and I thought Elgersma looked pretty good when he got in the game. He clearly still has a lot to learn, kind of go through his progressions, but you can see that there is a pretty decent amount of arm talent there available to him.
Yeah, Bo Melton, I want to highlight too. I mean, he really does look like, like he's going to obviously make this team. He's got a lot of positional versatility too. A wide receiver, play special teams, all that, but he looked really natural in coverage, and did some good things and was pretty high up there as far as coverage grade goes.
Yeah, he improved a lot in his second game. I think he had a 73.7 coverage grade according to PFF. So he made a big jump from his first professional game playing corner to his second professional game. And he almost doubled his snaps. He went up to 42 total snaps in this game. So he had a bigger workload. and he improved with that opportunity. And he played against a lot. He played against a lot of those snaps against, the ones and the twos. I know they were missing a couple wide receivers, but he wasn't going against the threes the whole time.
Yeah, and then conversely, he got a ton of looks. And he was actually this first game he was injured in the Jets game, but Kamal Hadden got picked on quite a bit. Mr. Michael Pittman Jr., if you've ever heard of him. Pretty good wide receiver, but pretty tough showing for Kamal Hadden. So I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to the 53-man roster, but it'd be pretty hard to think that he's going to be making this team at any capacity. Warren Brinson, at least in that second half, he showed some flashes, and definitely shows that he's acclimating himself to the NFL speed and the physicality of it too. So I was really liking what I was seeing from Warren Brinson, and I thought Stackhouse had like a middle of the road type of performance. You could definitely see the potential as that raw, that run stuffer, zero tech right there, right across from the center. So, but yeah, I thought Brinson had some good stuff. And then, where I thought, Emmanuel Wilson had a pretty good performance. I think he's got some ball security issues too. I think he ended up having a fumble and putting that one on the floor too as well, which kind of drops a little bit of his score. But there's no doubt Emmanuel Wilson is an excellent running back when he gets into the open field. And just in general, he looked like him and Amar Johnson to me look like the most kind of impressive backs to run the football in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple more shout outs. Carl Brooks had a really good game. I think he was the highest rated player in this game. He only had 8 total snaps, but he did have 2 total pressures on those snaps. And, I think we talked a little bit about seeing a little more from Carl Brooks. This was a good positive step in that direction to kind of solidify himself as the 3rd, maybe 4th defensive tackle on this team. I don't think that he's going anywhere. And the Katana Oladapo and Micah Robinson, a couple of young secondary players, really did play well also. Who would you say disappointed you the most in this game, Bob? Is it Isaiah Simmons, or do you have another name that disappointed you the most?
Yeah, I mean, how could it not be, right? And just kind of his overall just career trajectory, So yeah, he went basically from he's probably going to be there as the 4th linebacker to I don't even know if he's going to make this team. He looks lost in coverage. His run, he can't tackle. And he gets run over for run defense. It's just he did. Although I'll give him one thing when they were over there towards the goal line and in the red zone. He did make one good kind of open field. I don't even want to call it a tackle, but kind of a jolt and get that guy out of bounds. I think it was at the 1-yard line. So that was probably the only one good thing I think I saw from Isaiah Simmons. But I don't know. Jordan, what is your thoughts on Isaiah Simmons? Because, I mean, to me, 2 bad games in a row, I mean, obviously he could have some impact if he makes it on this team as a special teams player, but I don't with Tyron Hopper playing really well, with you mentioned Christian Welch, good chance of making this roster. I'm sorry, the flame is starting to go out in Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him cut in the first round of cuts and give a veteran an opportunity to catch on with another team who may be more linebacker, hybrid safety needy than the Packers are at this point in time. But I don't think it's coincidence that at least 2 other franchises that, have struggled to put talent on the field even more than the Packers in the last few years have given up on a guy with such draft pedigree, like Christian Welch's brain and instincts in Isaiah Simmons, and he's probably like an all-pro every
Really
year.
Good. Yeah.
Because he's, Isaiah Simmons obviously has the physical gifts, but there's something about the feel for the game, understanding the scheme, something like that that's not clicking for him right now. And obviously it's not clicked for a few years in the NFL. So let's jump into that 53-man roster prediction. I think we're kind of just spinning our wheels on the game itself. There wasn't like a ton of things to really talk about from the game. We could get nitpicky, but there wasn't a lot. Rob, if you can make that slightly bigger for our audience. And if you're watching on YouTube, you have the visual. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, then we do have our visual of the 53 up on our YouTube video. So if that works out a little bit better for you, jump over to that side and watch on there. We'll just run over a couple of things where there really aren't many changes. But, quarterback, Jordan Love and Malik Willis are still our locks. We don't think that they're keeping any additional players there. However, we will say that, Taylor Elgersma probably has played his way onto the practice squad and jumped himself over Sean Clifford. I think that was, apparent with the play. But I also think that's apparent by the fact that they gave Elgersma a significant amount of time and really only gave Clifford some scraps at the end of the game. So if you're looking at our chart now, a couple things have changed since we did this last week. There's some different colors. There's also some asterisks. So players that have asterisks next to them have moved up or down our depth chart here. And then players who have green highlights are players who have maybe improved their draft stock. If they're still colored in red, we still think they're going to get cut, but they're getting closer to making this roster. They've jumped over the top of other players they're competing against. And conversely, some players that are in yellow maybe have dropped down that depth chart a little bit. What about the running back room, Rob? Where do we stand with that?
Yeah, not much has changed. We still just don't know if we'll have Marshawn Lloyd, right? So, dude just cannot stay healthy. So I guess that could flip this whole thing around. But Jacobs, Lloyd, Brooks, with Emmanuel Wilson in there, and then obviously with the play of Amir Johnson, I think you absolutely got to lock him in for the practice squad with Abanconda and Davis Price here getting the cut. So that's what I'm seeing for running back.
I find Abanconda really interesting because, just from a pure running back standpoint, Amir Johnson, I think, has a leg up in this contest, but they want to give Abanconda so many opportunities on special teams. And maybe they're just hoping that he can come back as a practice squad player, and in the event that they need to make a call up, that he can kind of be a special teams ace returner. I don't really know what their plans are for him, but just from an eye test, I think Amir Johnson is ahead of him as a pure running back at this point in time, and I think most of you all in Packers Nation would agree with that. So, wide receivers, we did not see any of our top 5 wide receivers play in this game, so there's been no status changes there. We were hoping that Malik Heath and McCole Hardman might battle it out a little bit more. I'm not sure that there was really any sizable movement between those two players. McCole Hardman did have 2 receptions. One was a nice gain. It didn't really necessarily move the needle for me, as he's got to be a lock, or he's got to be on this team over Malik Heath. I think the most notable things for me was clearly seeing that, that Julian Hicks was a starter, got 58 total snaps, and played really well. I think that would probably tell you that in terms of that next tier between Hicks, Johnson, Shepard, and Naylor, that he's kind of the Packers' favorite on that list. And Cornelius Johnson is a guy who they like an awful lot, that they gave 51 snaps to as well, and also played pretty well all around with those opportunities given to him. And I think if they could cut guys and put guys on practice squad, I would say that Hicks and Johnson would be the 2 that they would really want to have back on that practice squad. So I don't know, you got anything else about receivers?
Nope, I'm in line with that. Tight end, no surprise here, but Kraft, Musgrave, um, Fitzpatrick here in yellow too. Has been having some flashes, and then Ben Sims has been having some really good play too here as well. So we think that it would be a lock for the practice squad for Ben Sims with Swinson and Lumpkin getting the cut. We don't think that they'll keep those two. So
Yeah, and just if you didn't watch our video last week and are following along too, the players that are in the yellow are players that we do think are kind of battling for those last spots or kind of on the fringe. So that's what that indicator means for us on this chart. Offensive line, we still have our 5 starters there: Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and Zach Tom. As you go from left to right, Jordan Morgan, like we said, he had an exceptional week. That's 2 weeks in a row. He looks like he is fitting the bill as a former first round pick, somebody who has talent to not only play tackle but guard. He clearly is probably going to be the first guy off the bench for every position except for center. And if there's a center injury, Sean Ryan's going to bump into that spot, and Jordan Morgan enters the lineup wherever you see fit. Anthony Belton, as we mentioned, isn't going anywhere. They invested a second-round pick in him. He's probably the 7th lineman on this team. He's going to get better with time. And then you kind of get into a crapshoot. Jacob Monk, I think Rob and I both still believe, has a spot on this roster. He needs to improve in his pass protection, but has been good against in his run blocking. He didn't have any penalties this week, I don't think. Donovan Jennings had another penalty that was pretty costly, basically a drive stopper. He's really got to play well this next week to maybe fend off Kadeem Telfort, which had a much better week. And those are the 2 players that we kind of think are actually vying for that 9th spot as an offensive lineman. But Lecitus Smith played pretty well. What did you think of his performance over the weekend?
yeah, he's jumping up. He's making some noise, and I think he can play all 3 spots inside, left guard, center, and right guard. So he's got a lot of positional versatility. He's a veteran. He's been grading out really well, and looks the parts. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's making some noise here to make the case for him to jump up into this offensive line room. And for depth purposes, I think he's one of the best up there. And so far, from what I'm seeing, unless that completely goes south this weekend, he should make it. So.
I almost wonder if they feel like Morgan and Belton really gives them 4 tackles that they like. If Lecitus Smith wins that job over Kadeem Telfort, who would really be a 5th tackle, but I think they like him less on the interior. Maybe there is a path for Lecitus Smith with a really good week 3 for him to jump up on that roster and kind of be a surprise move if Donovan Jennings can't fend him off. So
yeah, absolutely. And then defensive tackle, Clark, Wyatt, Brooks, Stackhouse, and Brinson. Wooden kind of came back down to earth. So Rob's hype train for Colby Wooden might be going down the drain. Not that he was terrible, but just wasn't as good, I think, as he has been in training camp and even in the Jets games. But and then Randolph Jr., who actually, I thought had a pretty decent game for us here too. And then Esther just has not performed well, and he's gonna get cut. If he's gonna get cut.
Yeah, real time, I went into my side of the spreadsheet. I gave those some asterisks. Actually, those are 2 guys that we moved. We put Randolph Jr. ahead of Esther at this point in time because Randolph Jr.'s actually been playing pretty decent. I think he is somebody that the Packers would probably like to retain on the practice squad if they could. And to be fair to Colby Wooden, he only played 9 snaps. So it's not that he got a lot of chances to impress. But I still think he's kind of a bubble player with his history on this roster. So Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Brenton Cox Jr., Barron Sorrell and Kingsley Enagbare are the 5 defensive ends that we still feel are going to make this team. Seems destined that Colin Oliver is going to end up on the pup. I don't see Mosby or Deslin Alexander making a play for a roster spot. And I really don't think that they're going to keep less than 5 defensive ends at this point in time. So the only thing that changed here is with how well Kingsley Enagbare has played the last 2 weeks, Rob and I went ahead and we gave him the green light and we locked him into this roster. So we will see if that changes. We're probably not going to change that. And we'd probably be surprised if they cut him a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, and then moving over to linebacker, obviously Quay Walker, Adrian Cooper, Isaiah McDuffie, and then who I think has been the most impressive player and most improved player with Tyron Hopper. You know, he's shown some athleticism. He can cover and he can get his nose in there and he can tackle too. So, you know, I was talking to Jordan before this, but you know, it wouldn't surprise us a few weeks into the season if in base defense 4-3, so 3 linebackers out there. It's Quay Walker, Adrian Cooper, and Tyron Hopper here at some point. Now, definitely they'll give McDuffie the start because he's a veteran and they tend to lean that way. He's got the experience, he's got the snaps, he's got the pedigree, but man, Tyron Hopper is making that a really tough decision on some of those coaches and that staff because he's just absolutely excelling. So, and then Christian Welch, you know, who's bumped himself up here. I don't think he's a bad one on here to be able to get that 5th linebacker spot, and might definitely deserve it. So, and then obviously we talked about it, but Isaiah Simmons just is not putting the tools in the tool set together. It's not clicking for him quite yet. So he's a good chance that he could just get cut, like we said earlier, so he could find another team if another team is willing to want his services with Jamin Johnson and Bartlett not making the team for the linebackers.
I still think there's a really good chance that Jamin Johnson ends up on this practice squad. We'll talk about that in a minute here, kind of give you some locks and some guys that we think are going to make it. But yeah, I think the linebacker room was the room with the most movement this past week. Maybe only second to that being the cornerback room. Nixon, Hobbs, Valentine, Bullard, and we've added Bo Melton as a lock. We talked about his improvement earlier in coverage. I think he's going to have a really catastrophic and terrible week 3 to not make this roster, but I just think he's too valuable with all that he can do. And, you know, with all of the wide receiver health issues, that's probably some extra insurance there. Rob and I both think that Micah Robinson did have a pretty impressive week and probably jumped himself up over Kalen King and Corey Ballantyne at this point in time, and Kamal Haddon kind of sinking himself a little bit on this depth chart. So there's still a path for Kalen King to make this roster. And I really think it's going to come down to Micah Robinson and Kalen King next week to win that cornerback 6 spot. If you're not counting in any other injuries, right? Like if Zane Anderson and Omar Brown are both hurt to start the season, and you want to say that Bullard's going to play safety, obviously that opens a spot for somebody like Kalen King to be the 6th corner to start the year if you need more defensive backs. So
yeah, and then safety, obviously McKinney, Williams, Oladapo has been showing up and showing out too. He's a lock, been playing really well. Zane Anderson in here, and then obviously Omar Brown. He got injured, a chest contusion. Stayed in Indianapolis for that, so we'll have to just keep you up to speed as far as that goes. But him and Baldwin with consideration for the practice squad.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So just a little bit of look at the practice squad near the bottom of our screen there. Actually, I didn't recalibrate the total count for players, so kind of ignore that bottom column there. But we've kind of penciled in players in bold that we think obviously they have to pass through waivers and not get picked up by another team, but players that the Packers are hoping make it to the practice squad. But we've got Taylor Elgersma there, Ben Sims, Amir Johnson. We do think Abataconda is gonna be sent to the practice squad. Hopefully we can retain him as well. I do think that if they want a fifth tackle in their system, Kadeem Telford's probably they're still their best bet. Tyler Cooper is a player that Rob and I like, so we hope that he sticks around for some development. And then Lecitus Smith, you can see over in the bottom right, is a player that we've talked about pretty highly, so hopefully he makes the practice squad. Those two wide receivers, Cornelius Johnson and Julian Hicks, we think would be locks if they can sneak through. Other players making it right now, Aaron Mosby, Deslin Alexander. I do like Jamin Johnson's pedigree a lot. So I'm going to give him a lock to be a 6 linebacker. Omar Brown has had a good enough camp to, I think, be a lock at safety as well. I like Jonathan Baldwin to make this practice squad, Kalen King, Randolph Jr., and then McNamee, which is our kicker, which had a little bit of a rough game. He almost just gets a freebie because he gets to join the Packers on that NFL Pathways plan. The only way that they can use that 17th roster spot is on an international player. So maybe if he has another bad week, they could go out and find another international player that they like. But right now, that's McNamee on this team, right? So kind of bringing everything to a close here. Just remember, we have more great Packers content from Sounds Gouda every Wednesday and Saturday. Make sure to share this with your family, friends, and other Packers fans. If you're on YouTube, make sure to comment, like, and hit that subscribe button. It helps the show a lot. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please follow us as well. You can connect with us on X. Rob's at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and I'm at Olson Jord. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Been wanting this shit forever.